Okay, good afternoon everyone. Uh, so thank you very much for coming for this seminar. So this is a seminar and interactive session with Dr. Stephen Dougherty, and he is the Director for the Faculty and Curriculum at Becker's Professional Education. Now, by this time, you must be all aware that IMU will be partnering with Becker's Professional Education, essentially to bring USMLE Step 1 preparatory materials for IMU students, the current students as well as students in legal campus and alumni. Essentially, this is quite a very engaging activity because we are providing you information on USMLE steps and giving you a tool or materials in which you can be prepared. You can go through the materials while you are in your medical school, and essentially by the end of your basic sciences like Sem 5, students actually preparing for USMLE should be able to confidently take USMLE Step 1 exams. And most of you who have come here must be knowing a little bit background about what is USMLE. So essentially it's a United States medical licensing examination, and these have 3-step exams. And this opportunity is quite useful for you all, because while you are learning in your basic sciences, you can link to the review materials. Okay, so today with us is Dr. Stephen, and along with is Mr. David. They're both from Team Becker, and then Mr. Stephen will be going to have a talk with you all and generally engage us on few concepts about Becker's, about Step 1, about study skills or test taking strategies. So can I invite Stephen?
Well, thank you very kindly. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this fine afternoon? I'm jet lagged, so if I fall over, you'll understand what's going on. I thought I would try to talk to you a little bit about the USMLE exam with a focus on the Step 1 exam. Make sure you have a sense of what the exam sequence is. Try to talk to you a little bit about our general recommendation for preparing for the exam, and then I'm going to end by talking a little bit about the process of getting a residency, that is your PGY, postgraduate training in the United States, if you have interest in that. Now, what I did was come here with some ideas about things that might be useful for you to hear, but I also want to invite, as I always do, give questions. Please feel free, raise your hand, ask me the question. I'll do a question and answer session at the end, but as we're going forward, if you have something you'd like to hear more about, give me the guidance, and I will do my best to answer that. Let me put it this way. If you have questions about the USMLE, I'm the guy to ask. And so if I'm here, you should take advantage of that, ask me your questions. I've been doing this in one way or another for GE over the last 30 years. I've seen thousands, and literally thousands of students go through the process. I have a sense of the system, what works, what doesn't work, and my intention here is to just make you all more familiar with the process and get a sense of how you might, well, organize yourselves as you're going through the process. The first slide contains, as always, just contact information. If you have questions when I'm no longer before you, this is, of course, how to reach out and ask me those questions. I do spend a considerable amount of time responding to students every day because my mission is to make sure everyone's well informed and can organize themselves well for this activity. You see an email address. Below that is the address of a free website I maintain, providing advice and guidance, more extended versions of things I'll say today. I also have a Facebook presence. I'm on Twitter. I started Instagram. So all this is just me trying to make myself available to students around the globe. So, first, I always just like to make sure everyone's clear on what we're talking about. Let's walk through the sequence for USMLE. USMLE, as I hope you already know, is a 3-step sequence with 4 exams total. Now, I want you to, as I'm going through this, appreciate the way the sequence is laid out, because it's a increasingly more complex set of presentations as you're trying to demonstrate you have the ability to handle more complex issues, more complex patients. We start you off with step one, traditionally taken in the United States at the end of the second year of medical school after you finish your so-called preclinical training. And step one, the focus on understanding how things work. It's all about keyword mechanisms. Trying to make sure you not only know what things are, but have a sense of what the underlying dynamics are, not just what's on the surface, but what's going on underneath to make what you're seeing on the surface. This idea of understanding the mechanism is key. We don't just want doctors to have sort of a guess, we want them to have a sense of how things are put together and to maintain that sense of how things are put together all the way across your medical career. Step two, well, there's two parts to step two, but the multiple choice version, step two CK, CK, by the way, stands for clinical knowledge. This is traditionally taken by U.S. medical students at the end of the fourth year, just as you're finishing your clinical training. Here you're being presented with clinical cases for, we like to call them the average patient, the typical patient. The idea here, matching where students are in their education, is that there's always a senior attending physician looking over your shoulder to help you should things become complex. You're supposed to handle what we like to sometimes call the 90%. That usually walk through the door, the routine things. It's the average diabetic, it's the average person with hypertension, average congestive heart failure, things that are common, often seen, without a whole lot of undue complications. This is you just showing that you know how to manage the patient. Mechanism for step one, management for step two CK. The crucial question for step two CK is, do you know what to do? But more than that, do you know what to do next? One of the maddening things about step two CK is you look down through the options, and you say, ooh, I want to do all 5 of these things. Yeah, but they said, which one do you want to do next? You're going to say, well, in the clinic, there's 5 of us, and we each do one of them. Right, but on the exam, it's only you. Nobody else is there to help you. You got to pick what's the most important thing to do next. Order matters, because priority is a core part of medical practice, after all. Step 3. Step 3 is another multiple choice exam, taken usually when people are in their first year of residency and their first postgraduate year. You can take step 3 beforehand, but if you don't need to, there's no reason to, because having that residency under your belt helps you do better on the step 3 exam. Step 3 exam is a 2-day exam, and for this exam, the metaphor is you are the senior physician. You are the attending. Look over your shoulder, there's nobody back there anymore, you're it. You're the last line of defense. If it gets by you, there's nothing else to pick it up. What you're going to get here are longer and, as you would guess, more complex cases. I'm fond of pointing out to students, once you get out of the classroom, once you're in the clinic, don't you notice patients rarely have one thing wrong, they have many things wrong. Medicine is not just about treating the condition, it's about understanding how all these conditions interweave together, deciding what is priority, what requires your attention, and then doing the right thing to address what is that most important thing. A more complex set of issues must be addressed here. Step 3 is a 2-day exam, as I said. The first day and a half are standard multiple choice questions. They give you a case, they ask you a question about the case. The second day, in the afternoon, are so-called clinical case simulations. Now, this is either scary or fun, depending on how you want to look at it. For these clinical case simulations, they give you a description of a patient, a case. And then they stop, give you a blank page and say, what would you like to do now? There are no options, there's no question except what are you going to do next? And you write orders like you would if you're on the wards, and then based on the orders you write, the patient changes. The clock advances, and they say, all right, now, 3 hours later, this is what the patient is like. What would you like to do now? And that process continues, changing the patient based on what you prescribe, based on what you order, until either the patient resolves or you kill somebody. And you can laugh, but they tell me that in the data they publish, on step 3, the clinical case simulation, about 40% of students kill at least one patient. So, and here's the scary part. You can kill a patient and it doesn't mean you failed the exam, just to keep that in mind. So, hey, great, we'll let you kill somebody. It's okay, just don't kill too many. All of which is to remind you of the reason why we have this sequence. We're trying to see if you can think, make decisions, deal with patients in a safe forum. If you get a question wrong on the exam, if you make a bad decision, nobody suffers, nobody's harmed, no one's caused undue pain. We're trying to give you these questions so you can show us you can make those decisions before we're going to give you a situation where your decisions are going to cause some real-world consequences. And I really coach you to think about this whole USMLE sequence that way. It's not really you as a student showing that you studied. Those days are behind you when you're doing these exams. It's you demonstrating that you're good enough that we should open the door and let you in to do that face-to-face patient care. In short, the whole sequence of USMLE is not testing your skill, it's getting an admission ticket. You're doing these things to prove that we should admit you to have that real-world encounter and go on and practice medicine, which you've always wanted to do. All of which reminds me to tell you, the exam is not about you as a student, once again, it's about you as a physician. Now, I don't know you. I know you're in various stages of your medical school education, but folks, if you see yourself as a student, if you talk to yourself about how I'm going to get this question right and make the professor happy, you're not ready to take USMLE. You're simply not. USMLE is not for students, it's for doctors. And the sooner we can get you to make that mental transition, the sooner we can get you to see a physician in the mirror, the sooner we can get you to think about what you're going to be, not where you came from, the better you're going to do in the exam, and frankly, the better you're going to do for your patients going forward. USMLE is a series of hurdles we put in place, calculated, thought out, to make sure you're ready for, well, the real-world consequences of real-world decisions. I want to stress that. Medicine is not about knowing things. Medicine is about making decisions. Doctors are not doctors because they know more than anybody else. Ladies and gentlemen, in this day and age, anybody with a good internet connection, a good search engine, knows more than you know in anything in roughly 15 minutes, and you know it's true, right? You don't have a career because you know the most. You have a career because you know what to do. When everyone is standing around wondering, you're the one that makes the decision and moves the process forward. And we need people to do that. The multiple choice format here is, I want you to recognize the perfect way to test physicians. Multiple choice questions are not simply what we do because of what we know how to do. They are the perfect way to test physicians. Because multiple choice questions are about what? Making the right decision. I'm going to talk more about this as we go forward. Oral exams and essay exams are stupid ways to test doctors. Because your patients don't come in and ask you to hold forth and say what you know. They expect you to make the right decision. And multiple choice questions are all about making the right decision. Students talk, feel smart because they know something. Doctors make decisions. Medicine is not knowledge for knowledge's sake, it's knowledge for action's sake. We will judge you at the end of the day, not by how voluminous is the information in your head, but by your ability to act correctly in a timely fashion and alleviate or solve the patient's problem. And multiple choice exams, USMLE in particular, are all geared to that simple idea. Folks, I don't know how much you know about making decisions, but I'm just going to have you reflect on something with me here. All decisions are emotional. That character in Star Trek, that Spock character, yeah, not possible. Because people without emotions can't make decisions. We have neurology patients that feel no emotion and they can't make a single decision. Right or left, paper, plastic, they can't decide anything. Let's do it again. All decisions are emotional. So what are you being tested on these exams? Your cognitive knowledge? No, your emotional maturity. All decisions are emotional. Every decision you ever make is a leap of faith into the void, and we're looking for people with the courage and with the experience to do that leap of faith. And I tell every class getting ready for these exams, this is what you're being tested on. If you're seeing yourself as a student who's going to stand in the back and be quiet, we don't need you. We need someone that steps up to the front and takes a little bit of charge over things. It's all about being a physician, folks. And being a physician is about being willing to take the decision when nobody else is. Let me get you clear on the moment we're trying to get you ready for it. You're in the room, the patient is tanking, All the alarms are going off, the family's very distraught, people screaming in the hallway, everyone's saying, what do we do? And everyone looks at you and says, doctor, tell me what to do next. If you can handle that moment, we did our job. If you can't handle that moment, well, you have a little bit of time to get there, but that's the moment we're trying to get you ready for. The exam is not about showing me that you're smart, we already know that. The exam is not about showing me that you can study hard, we already know that. The exam is about showing us now that when that moment comes, you can handle the moment. And the more I can get you to recognize that, the better you're going to be in your preparation. 3 exams of increasing complex patience, increasingly complex problems to solve, so you can demonstrate your problem-solving ability and your ability to make the decisions. Now I said there were 3 steps, but I said there were 4 exams. So I'm going to take just a brief moment and talk about the last one of the exams. The Step 2 CS exam. CK, I talked about that before, clinical knowledge. CS, clinical skill. CS exam is different than all the others. It is not a multiple choice exam sitting in front of a computer answering questions. It is a, well, interacting with live people exam. It's an exam featuring what we call standardized patients, SPs, and you will face 13 patients, actors portraying patients over the course of the day. You walk in the room, you have about 20 minutes to understand what's going on, do an exam, ask the right questions. You walk out, you have 10 minutes to write it up, and you go on to the next patient. You're graded in terms of how well you handle the person, your ability to be personal and connect, your ability to ask the right questions, get the information you need, English competency skills, of course, and your ability to come up with an appropriate differential at the end. I want you to stop and focus on that. The CS exam doesn't ask for a diagnosis, it asks you for a differential, because we know that's how we know the good physicians. Guessing the right diagnosis tells us nothing. Hearing your differential tells me how your mind works and what things you're considering, and that's what you're getting at the end of this CS case. The CS case does test that differential, the knowledge you have, but it's really mostly about how well you interact with people, how well you can manage your time. And we put this exam in place because we discovered some people do really well on tests and they're crappy with real human beings. Come on, you have people in your medical school class like this, you know what I'm talking about, right? And is that the kind of person you want to be your physician? No, and so they put another exam in place to make sure this other additional skill set is one that physicians have. If you can handle questions but you can't handle people, that's a problem. And so we have a test to see how well you handle the people. This clinical skills exam must be taken in the United States, as must the Step 3 exam. Step 1, Step 2 CK can be taken outside the United States. We're given in, I think about 90 different countries, including here in this country. And by the way, these exams are given essentially all year round. One of the beautiful things about the USMLE system is you don't have like a special day where everyone takes the exam. It is taken on an ongoing, rolling basis. You schedule, you go in, you take your exam. The beauty of that is you take it when you're ready to take it. If you're not ready, postpone. Put it back a month, put it back 2 months, do what you need to get ready, which all of research says is absolutely the best way for you to learn and test on what you know. Testing you against a fixed deadline means you're simply cramming for the deadline and you're not doing the learning you need to do. The whole system here is geared to give you every opportunity to do the preparation you need so you can demonstrate the competency you have. All this is maybe a little bit intimidating, but also it's kind of fun because this is what you signed up for. You didn't sign up to be a student for the rest of your life, did you? I hope not. You signed up to be a physician. The whole purpose of these exams is to be the moment where you go through that transition and come out the other side literally a different person. Literally no longer the student you were, but the doctor you're going to be. Okay, that was just a quick run through the exam sequence. Anyone have any questions about the exam sequence? Seems like something fun? You want to sort of get together with your friends and do this on the weekend? No, okay, well, it's simply the sequence that moves you to where you want to be. I'd also like to spend a moment getting you to understand what makes a USMLE question a USMLE question. So I'm going to focus now just exclusively on Step 1, which I'm guessing what most of you are thinking about going forward. You're going to, as you're trying to prepare for your Step 1 exam, have a lot of sources on the internet for questions, question banks you can use. I always want students to develop a good sense of what is a good question. Here's the problem. You like easy questions because you get them right. But the easy ones aren't preparing you for the real exam where they're not easy. What you really want are questions that are matching with the exam is going to be, so you're ready when you're in the real exam. Doing simple workouts doesn't get you ready for the Olympics. And ladies and gentlemen, so we're clear, this is the Olympics. This is not Sandlot, this is the bigs, as we say in the United States. The big leagues where you need to be able to be at your best game so you can demonstrate what you're able to do. All right, let's try to show you what a good USMLE question is by doing just a bit of history. If you were taking the, well, then called National Board exam back in the 1980s, it was filled with questions not unlike this one. A single sentence and then 5 options, A through E. Gertzmann syndrome caused by lesion of which of the following areas of the brain? The answer for those that know, obviously, is D, dominant parietal cortex. Now listen, as long as you have that mental connection, Gertzmann's go to the dominant parietal, that single connection, you got the question right. Nice. We call this a level 1 item. Namely, one mental connection gets you the question correct. This is the kind of question I see in many medical school exams around the United States, indeed around the world as I travel. This is absolutely not a Step 1 question. That question was submitted beyond the current Step 1 exam. Not only would they reject it, they'd probably call the person on the phone and laugh at them repeatedly, because it's not even the ballpark. This is a nice question to test that you have a good basic foundation of knowledge, but it's not testing with the level of decision making the current exam requires. So, that was the 80s. Time marches on, the 80s become the 1990s, and well, this question's transformed to this. Now I want you to first notice we have the same 5 options we had before, but instead of a single sentence naming a diagnosis, now we have a paragraph describing a patient. Take a moment, as some of you are doing, and read down through that paragraph. As you're reading down through that paragraph, for those that know, isn't that pretty much the best description of Gertzmann's you've ever seen? Oh, by the way, those that don't know, that's the best description of Gertzmann's you're ever going to see. All the basic signs and symptoms are there. It is literally, you should recognize, a textbook presentation, right? But wait, we just made the question more complicated, because to get this question right, you must 1, read and recognize Gertzmann's, and then 2, leap to the right answer. If you're counting with me, this is easy. This is a level 2 item. 2 correct processes must be executed to get the question correct. Well, that's where the exam was back in the 1990s. But hey, it is the new millennia. It is the new age. And so, well, this question, as we move in the new century, is transformed to this. Now you have the same paragraph we had before, presenting the case. But, well, instead of a set of Latinized names, you have the photograph of a brain, arrows indicating regions. Pick it out. Well, let's count again, shall we? In order to get this question correct, we must 1, read and recognize Gertzmann's, got it. 2, remember Gertzmann's goes to dominant parietal, remember that. And then 3, pick up the dominant parietal region of the brain. The answer, of course, is still D, just as it was previously, yes? If you're counting with me, 3 correct decisions get you 1 question correct. Remember that basic rule, because that's the base for the Step 1 and indeed Step 2 exam. I'll say it again, 3 correct decisions get you 1 question correct. Doctors aren't the ones that know. Doctors are the ones that make decisions. They've basically stopped, surveyed, watched real physicians as they go through their practice. And they mapped out the decision process real physicians do, and they wrote questions to see if you can do those decision processes. Now look, if you don't have basic information, then you have nothing to decide about. But just having basic information, making a decision is something else. All right, before I go on, just a couple of things here. Suppose you make 2 correct decisions. How many points do you get? Nothing. You don't get partial credit on the exam or indeed in the real world. You have to get it all right or it's all wrong. You have to make sure you nail all the decisions in the sequence here. Next, take a look at this question and tell me, what's the basic science subject being tested here? What are they testing you on here? Call it out here. Neuroanatomy, sure. What else? Pathology, right? Behavioral science, my subject, yes. And also a little bit of physiology thrown in there. It's not about single subjects, it's about the intersection of the subjects coming together, because it's the grabbing the different pieces of knowledge you need from the different disciplines that is the knowledge base of medical practice. And one more. This question's current form, well, contains what the USMLE calls a fatal flaw. Fatal flaw is a reason why this question's current form would never actually be on the current exam. What's wrong with the question? Can anybody spot what's wrong with the question? Here it is. Agraphia, buzzword. Never on the real exam. Yes, folks, I know there's a set of books out there you can buy called buzzwords that are sold with the idea, if you know these magic words, you'll get the question right. All right, wait, I have a question for all of you. How stupid do you think the question writers actually are? Don't you think they know what buzzwords you're looking for? Ladies and gentlemen, I know what buzzwords you're looking for. They know what buzzwords you're looking for. And so, guess what? When I'm writing a practice question, I leave the buzzword out, providing prosaic description like I'm supposed to. Or, I gotta tell you, about a really devilish moment, I leave the buzzword in and I make damn sure it's the wrong answer. Because if you're trying to get the question right because you saw the magic open sesame word, I don't know what I should call you, but doctor's pretty much not on that list. Because you don't diagnose because the patient says the magic word. You look at the pattern, you recognize what's happening, you respond accordingly. Yes, that is, after all, medicine. Oh, no, that's not how students think at all, but it's how doctors think. It's what the exam requires of you. What would they have in the real exam? Take out the word agraphia, put a prosaic description of what you'd see if you're watching this patient. Okay, well, that's where the exam has been, but it's not where the exam is going. Starting about 7, 8 years ago, this question might be transformed to this. Now, instead of a paragraph describing a patient, you have a lead-in sentence, a question line, but the bulk of the presentation of the patient is, when you click on that bar, a 25 to 30 second video clip. We can watch somebody display the deficits for Gertzmann's, and then you answer the question just like before. Increasingly, questions on the exam feature video clips and audio clips. About 10% of the exam right now is video clips and audio clips. Why are they using video clips and audio clips? Not because they're trying to make it harder, that's not correct. They're trying to make it more physician-like. Forget that you're thinking about taking the exam. Put that aside, be objective with me. What's a better question to ask a physician? Read this paragraph and recognize what's wrong with the patient, or watch this video. There's really not much debate here, right? It's simply a better question. It's just a better clinical presentation. It's a better way to test if you know what you're doing. So being able to see something, hear something correctly, or read the paragraph, recognize what's wrong with your patient, these are the basic skills that start the process of answering the step 1 questions. And by the way, nothing that I've said is something that you really don't, well, everything I've said is things you actually want to be able to do in the real world of medical practice, right? So I need you to hear this. I teach in medical school in Chicago. I've taught there for many years, and I'm going to confess something to you. We sometimes teach you things in medical school that you don't need. We sometimes teach you a lot of things that are useless for medical practice. Sorry, you know it's true. Let's just have an honest conversation. Guess what? None of that stuff is on step 1. Because every question that goes into step 1, indeed step 2, indeed step 3, goes through a series of screens. The most important of which is, in my opinion, why does a physician need to know this? And if there's no good answer for that, you never see the question. That obscure physiology point you were taught, it's not on the exam. That strange little thing you learned about biochemistry the professor will like, it's not on the exam. I didn't say it wasn't important, but it's not important for you as a physician. You understand that? And so things that physicians need to know are tested. Things physicians don't need to know, even if it's of interest, scientific, they're not on your exam. Because why? I repeat myself on purpose. We're testing physicians, not students. We don't care if you grasp these arcane details. We care about when the real patient's in front of you, you have what you need, and you can render the right decision. The exam is relentless about this theme, and so you must be relentless in your preparation on this theme. There's a tendency to get bogged down in all these little details because you think the more details you know, the better. And you know now, stop, that's false. You're not supposed to be the one that knows all the details. You're supposed to be the one that knows the right details. Folks, I got to tell you, if you're one of these people that really wants to know all the details, you want to be the one that really knows all the obscure details about something, that's a fine ambition. Here's what you must do. Drop out of medical school and go get a PhD. PhDs know an awful lot about very little. I'm a PhD, I know what I'm talking about here, but you're a physician. It's not your job to have all the details. It's your job to have the spectrum of knowledge across multiple domains. You can tap into what you need, make the decision, and move the process forward when nobody else can. And as long as you keep that in mind, you understand now exactly what we're trying to get you ready for. Okay. Well, I always want to give you a little hint about how we want you to do the right procedures for reading and processing these complicated questions. So, in the short time frame to have with you, I'm going to use one of my favorite exercises here. Here you see a question with the options. The way to train you to go through and process this question efficiently and quickly, because this is a timed exam, is to give you the question, as I did, and then take out a piece of paper. You take the piece of paper and you cover the options. Why? Because don't you want to read through the options first? Don't. There's something called confirmation bias. Once you read the options, one of them looks good to you. You like it, you remember it, and you read the case then to try to justify that answer instead of coming up with the best possible answer. You know what I'm talking about, yes? So you put the piece of paper over the options. Why do we start with the piece of paper with the options? Because USMLE is a game with rules. Here's one of the key rules, and I quote from the rules for question writers. Every question in the Step 1 exam should be answered by an expert with no options provided. Translation, you try that. If you really get it, if you really know, you don't need A, B, C, D, or E, you know what the answer is before you get there, right? Why do we take them in the options? So you're not distracted by the options. Look, everybody seems to think the options are your friend. Folks, the options are not your friend, the options are the enemy. The options are not there to help you. The options are there to smoke you out, to con you, to fool you, into picking the wrong answer. The only friend you have all day as you're going through your USMLE exam is the question stem. Everybody seems to get this backwards. The options are my friend, the question stem is the enemy. You're getting this? No, the options are the enemy, the question stem your friend. Because why? Because the question stem, by rule, must give you everything you need to come up with the best possible answer. Now stop and recognize that's better than real life. Real life, you're often trying to make decisions. You don't have all the information you need. Hey, guess what? In USMLE, it's guaranteed you already have the information you need. Your job is to recognize it and use it and come up with the answer that's waiting for you there. How do we do that? We take away the options so you focus on what you should, the question stem. Now, you must read the question stem. All those gimmicks that people talk about on the internet about what you do so you don't have to read the question stem, they're all garbage. Folks, I read the chat rooms just like you do. Somebody always writes and says, these questions on USMLE, they're so long, they're all these words, they take so long to read. What do I do so I don't have to read them? And then I come back half hour later and there's all these, clever suggestions about what you do, and none of them work, folks. You got to read the question. Trying to answer without reading the question is like trying to help your patient without listening to your patient. You just don't have the information that you need. So you have to read down through the paragraph. Now, there's two ways to read down through the paragraph. Obviously, first sentence, second sentence, third sentence, fourth sentence as you walk your way down through the paragraph to get to the last line, the question line, which you must then answer. Or you may read the last line, the question line, and thus armed, walk your way down through the case, collecting the information you need in order to answer that question. Here's what our research tells us. Either strategy is fine. If you do first to last, or last and then first, your chance of getting the question right is identical. But I insist you pick one of the other strategy. You don't try one question, another question. Your question answering strategy should be a routine habit. You ought to be doing a mechanical process, executing it over and over again so you have your brain free to do the thought about the content that you're trying to work your way through. Oh, and by the way, if you're reading that last line, the question line, in hopes you won't have to read down through the long case, then don't you dare do that as your strategy. You're going to start at the top and read all the way down through. Because folks, sorry, on some commercial question banks you buy, sometimes just reading the last line is all you need and the rest of it's garbage. On USMLE, that'll never be on the exam. Why? One of the screens the question goes through, if they can read the last line and answer without doing the case, you'll never see the question. You understand? They made sure that doesn't work for you. You've got to read the question stem. Okay, wait. Reading the question stem is not enough. Have you done any practice questions? Anybody? How often have you read down through a practice question, gotten down to the bottom, said, wait a minute, and then went back and read through the case again, right? A lot. Okay, listen, and gently here though. I've just identified the number one thing I see that tells me a question answering strategy sucks. Ladies and gentlemen, you get to read every question exactly once. You don't have time to read it twice. So you have to get what you need the first time through. That's your only shot. You got to read it only once. What most people do, human behavior being what it is, they feel the time pressure, the ticking of the clock, and so you scan down through the case really quickly, get to the bottom, read the question line, realize you don't have what you need, and then you slow down and read more carefully through the case the second time, gathering what you need so you can answer the question. Well, folks, my advice to you is stunningly simple. Do the first time what you're doing the second time. Give up that initial scan, which is not buying you anything. Slow down and get what you need with a single pass. Wait a minute. I just told you to slow down on a time test? Yes, I did. Because here's the fact. It takes you less time to read it slowly once than it does to read it quickly twice. If you don't believe me, go get a stopwatch and test yourself after you walk out of here. You'll see what I'm saying is true. It's not about how quickly you're going, it's about how efficient you are. Let's do it again. How many times you get to read a question? I can't hear you. How many times you get to read a question? Once. You don't have time to read it twice, you got to read it once. Folks, the exam is triage. That's the right attitude. You're the only doctor in the ER, there's a bus crashed, here come 40 patients, you got to take care of them, the clock is ticking. You don't have a chance to look at it, think about it, ruminate. You got to look, assess, bark in order, and move on to the next gurney. And you got to do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and you're going to do this for 8 hours until your shift is over. You got to practice this. This is not natural, this is not normal. Nobody is born knowing how to do this behavior. Everybody wants to slow down, ruminate, think about it. You don't have that kind of time. Let's go. You have to practice this. So, you read it once, come down the question line, you come up with what you think is a great answer, and then we move the paper. Now the options are revealed, and the question stem gone. And now you're at the, not the hardest, but the easiest moment in the exam. What do you have to do? Pick a letter, and then move on. What you can't do is go back and look at the case again. Come on, don't you want to go back and look at the case now you've seen the options? Was that word increase or decrease? What was that lab value anyhow? Right. You don't lift the paper, leave it there, you can't go back. What's going on here? We're training your brain to that fact. You can't go back. Ladies and gentlemen, basic knowledge here, our brains are lazy. From years of evolution, our brains are trained to avoid burning glucose. If you're acting naturally and normally, you're going to postpone thinking as long as possible so you don't have to burn the sugar, right? What I need you to do is learn to burn it early. And so we take the case away, because here's what we've discovered. Once we take the case away, and you get the idea that once you read it, the case goes away, you'll start getting what you need the first time. You'll start getting what you need, and if you let yourself peak, your brain will say, oh, I can always go back and peek, and you'll stop getting what you need. Look, folks, I learned this many years ago. You all taught me this when I was teaching. If I throw a question up on the slide and I say I'm just going to leave it there, you can take your time, you all read casually, you don't pay much attention, you don't have much retention of the content. If I throw a question up there and I tell you I'm just going to leave this there for maybe 30 seconds, you read more carefully, you pay attention, you have more retention. In short, you're reading the question the way you should. So this is how you train. You look at the case, you got one shot through the case, you grab what you need, you move the paper up, and now you're going to pick an option. You can't go back. When you first start using this piece of paper technique to train yourself, you will not like it. You're going to just want to check something. Don't let yourself. Because once your brain learns you can't go back, it'll start getting what it needs the first time. Try it. This piece of paper technique, people write me all the time and say it adds 7 to 10% to your practice score. Because you get the right mechanics of doing the question, you get the most benefit of the knowledge you have. Oh, and by the way, so I'm clear, this piece of paper technique is not for the real exam, it's a training technique. You don't sit there in the real exam with a piece of paper going up and down. You do this to teach yourself the right behaviors, and you throw the crutch away and hope the right behaviors stay with you. Folks, in case it's not clear, I see doing questions the way I see teaching people to do surgery. It's a series of steps. You learn the steps, you make the routine, and you don't guarantee success, but you maximize your outcome, which is all we can hope for here, right? Yes, every question is different. Yes, every surgery patient is the same, but the process, the set of steps, the behaviors you do are stunningly consistent from one to the next. We want you to get good at this, make it a habit. This is what carries you forward unless you apply your knowledge to the exam. Any questions to this? Okay, next thing. I'm going to give you some advice and guidance about preparing for your exam. I'm going to give strong suggestions. If you don't like my suggestions, raise your hand and ask me about them. If you really don't like my suggestions, don't follow me. But here's where my suggestions come from. I work with lots of students. I've seen what students do that do well on the exam. I've seen what students do that don't do well on the exam. And all I do is run around the world telling you all to do what I've seen the students do well to get good scores. You don't have to listen to me, you can do your own thing, but here's what experience and data suggest. I first want you to take a look at this simple pyramid. This is called the knowledge pyramid. It's not original to me, someone else made it up, but it just says and reminds you there's different levels of knowledge, different levels of understanding. The base is recognition. You know what that means, I know it when I see it. Then there's memorization, I can call it to mind when I need it. Then there's problem solving, put things together in unique ways to solve particular issues or problems. And then finally, the capstone is innovation. Innovation, this is when you're involved in production of new knowledge. Right, this is medical education we're talking about. There's no innovation here, so let's deal with the rest of the pyramid. Medical school is pretty much right here, through recognition and memorization. If you come to lecture, if you listen, you read the book, you go over the notes, you absorb the material, you show us you've done on the exam, we give you top marks. Nice. USMLE Step 1 exam is here, through memorization and problem solving. I mean, two things by this simple image. One, if you're doing to get ready for Step 1, even what made you stunningly successful in medical school, you're not going to be happy with your result. Why? Because we've changed the target on you. We're asking you to do something different, and so your behaviors have to change to meet this new challenge. And two, if you don't have this good, solid base of memorization and recognition, well, then you can't step up to do the problem solving. You have to have that base in place, but just having the base isn't enough. You must step up above that base in order to get your exam performance. When we run courses, I'm here with Becker, we are hoping that you come to us with a good base from your faculty in medical school, recognition, memorization, so we can work with you on putting it together and doing the problem solving. It's something different here. Getting the pieces in place is one thing, knowing how to use the pieces is something else altogether. Having the knowledge available to you is one thing, being able to actually apply, use, reason that knowledge is a whole other process, and preparation for USMLE is just about that, learning how to do the application of the reasoning. All right. I've been trying for, well over 20 years to solve what I first thought was a simple problem. Namely, How come I have two students, both bright, well-educated, highly motivated, and one student goes in and does really well in step one, another student goes in and does poorly or fails in step one? What's that about? Well, I've decided it's not about how much you know. It's not about how hard you work. It's not about how motivated you are. It's how your knowledge is organized. The job you're getting ready for is already predefined for you. You're taking a multiple choice test. So when getting ready for step one, everything about your process will be targeted to that predefined goal, multiple choice test. See, folks, there's two basic ways we as human beings organize knowledge in our heads. The default for all human beings is, well, we organize to tell. We create stories and narratives that make sense of our world and make sense of our lives. Let me tell you about my trip here yesterday. Let me tell you about my vacation last week. Let me explain this biochemistry to you. We like to tell. We feel coherent when we tell. We feel like things make sense when we tell. And people reward us, especially when we tell well. That was a good story you told. I'm going to remember that. Thanks, that was a great explanation. I really got to remember what you told me. We feel good when we tell. The world makes sense. But here's your problem. On a multiple-choice exam, you don't get to tell me anything. You get to answer what I ask. You don't get to tell me what you know. You get to answer the decision I presented to you. Most people walk out of the exam frustrated. I had all this knowledge and they didn't ask me any of that. Of course not. Our job is not to ask you what you know. Our job is to give you a set of circumstances and have you make decisions. Well, and by the way, quick aside, of course they keep asking you all the things you don't know. That's not a random event. I'm sorry, stop, just stop for a second. Who knows more what you all collectively know and don't know than the USMLE? All they do every day is collect data from students taking the exam. They know what you know and don't know better than you know, right? And so if you were putting an exam together, come on, head in the game here, what would you do? Include questions on things you know from all your data everybody knows, or include questions on things you know where people are kind of confused? Yeah, of course that's your exam. Doesn't mean you're stupid when they keep asking you things you don't know. They know what you don't know, and so that's what the question's going to be about. That means, folks, when you're sitting in class and everybody goes, oh crap, I wish this lecture would be over, you better learn that. That's likely on the exam. All the things everybody likes and are excited about, yeah, that's not on your exam. Why? Because you all know that. It's then useless to test you on it. You know what I'm saying, right? Head in the game. We need to focus on the things that are likely to be tested, and the things everybody feels uncertain about are much more likely to be on the exam. Of course they are, right? On a multiple choice test, you don't get to tell me what you know, you just get to answer what I ask. That means if you're studying to tell, you're not getting yourself ready for the task. It's not about studying to tell, you have to study to decide. Your job in this exam is to make decisions. And so, once you accept that simple idea, I'm studying to make decisions, everything about how you prepare is predefined. Here it is, simple, 2 sentences. Never study a thing, always study sets of things, then learn how to choose within the set. That's it. I just gave you the secret to USMLE right there in 2 sentences. Let's do it again. Never learn about a single thing, learn sets, learn how to choose within the set. That is, if you're learning pharmacology, never learn about a single drug. No one's going to ask you about the drug. Learn a class of drugs, and learn how you're going to differentiate within the class, because that is the USMLE question, but also the physician's decision, right? In micro, never learn about a single pathogen. Who cares? No one's going to ask you about it. Learn a class of pathogens, and learn how you're going to differentiate within the class of pathogens, because that will be your question, right? Folks, it's not rocket science here, but if you really absorb this, it changes everything of how you prepare. Stop focusing on the thing and learning it. Focus on the set and how you discriminate. The template here you already know, it's differential diagnosis. We're not just talking about differential for path, we're talking about differential for everything. Don't spend all your time learning about that enzyme for biochemistry. Let's do it again. Nobody cares. You don't get to tell me about the enzyme. What do you have to do? You have to be able to make choices among options. If If you can make choice among options, you got the question right. And if you can't make choice among options, and you know all the rest of this stuff, you got the question wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, those who've done practice questions, how often do you go down, look at the options perhaps, aren't sure which one's the answer, and then you sit there telling yourself everything you remember about each one of the options? You know what I'm talking about, right? Right. Here's what you're doing at that moment. At that moment, you've given up getting the question right. You're not going to get it right. What are you doing? You're trying to prove to yourself you're not stupid. Look at what I know. We don't care. Pick a letter. Do the task we gave you. You don't get to do that task. Pick a letter. Your job is not to tell us about things, it's to make the right choice. I recognize this woman when I came in. She's the world's leading expert on the antipsychotic drug risperidone. She knows more about this drug from personal usage and research than anybody in the history of mankind. She is the world's expert. 99.9% of what she knows is useless for step one. Because they're never ever going to say, tell me about risperidone. What are they going to say? They're going to say, here's a patient, and should it be risperidone, olanzapine, clozapine, haloperidol, luxapine? And if you can tell me in paragraph form a lot of detail about each one of those drugs, we don't care. Pick one. That's your job as a physician, is to make the decision. Notice how happy you are when you know all the details, and then recognize how useless it is to know all the detail. Your job is not to be the one that knows all the details. Your job is the one who makes the right decision. That's it, folks. Of all things I have to tell you about getting ready for the exam, that is the secret. It's all about learning to discriminate within the sets. Let's talk just briefly about how you do some of this discrimination. Anybody use flashcards? Flashcards for maybe pharmacology? Flashcards can be really useful if they're organized correctly. Many times I see people using flashcards that have like the name of the drug on one side, and then the reverse side, detailed information about the drug, right? You know, chemical composition, the precursors, the interactions, the side effects. Yeah, that's a waste of time. No one's going to ask you that question. Sorry. What should your flashcards have? They should have the name of a class of drugs on one side, all the drugs in that class listed on the same side, top three most important highlighted, and then the reverse side, no more, and I mean no more, than the one or two key reasons why it would be this drug versus this drug versus this drug, because that is going to be your exam question. What about all the other crap? Who cares? It doesn't help you make a good decision, so it's not relevant. You understand what I'm telling you here? Notice how happy you are when you know the details. Notice how much of your knowledge is decorative. Makes you feel smart, doesn't get you a single question right. Because we didn't ask you to write out stuff, we asked you to make a choice. The way you study for a multiple choice exam, the way you study for an oral exam and essay exam, really different. On an oral exam and essay exam, knowing all the obscure detail gets you top marks. On a USMLE question, multiple choice, knowing all the obscure detail buys you nothing. In fact, you probably cluttered your head with things that are useless, so you can't see clearly and make the right decision. It's a simple idea, folks. I repeat it over and over again. That was the sixth time I've said it, because I'm trying to get you to grasp the simple idea. It's not about what you have, it's organizing it with the task at hand. It's all about being able to make decisions among the options. Let me try to summarize this in an easy to remember way. If I say to you, hey, tell me everything I ought to know about an elephant. Oh my goodness, that conversation never ends. From genetics to ecology, we could be talking about elephants years and years from now, long after I'm dead, you're all still talking about the elephant. But if I say, by way of contrast, hey, so how is an elephant different than a giraffe? And that's a big conversation, but that's a finite conversation. That's your exam preparation conversation. Stop learning about the elephant. Elephant versus giraffe is everything. Your job as a doctor is not to know things, it's to know how to choose among things. It's simple. Simple idea, but if I really get you to take this in, you will study differently, you'll learn differently, and guess what? You'll discover, instead of learning it today and forgetting it next week, you'll learn it today and you'll have it for a lifetime. Because folks, that is your job after all. Cramming for the exam, so it's gone after the exam, is useless activity. In fact, if you're sitting there memorizing this content, really working hard, and you know that a week from now it's going to be out of your head, then get up out of your chair and stop memorizing. Go out with your friends and have fun. It would be better use of your time. Sitting there memorizing something today you won't remember next week is a useless act. You don't get anything for it. You feel like you're working hard, we don't care. All we're going to want you to do is get the question right. You didn't do anything to help you get the question right. We're trying to get you to do the behaviors that get you the result instead of just feeling like you're working hard. Spinning your wheels gets you nothing. Look how hard I'm working. We don't care, sir. We don't care if this is the hardest thing you've ever done or the easiest thing you've ever done. All we care about is your score. So let's worry about getting yourself ready to get that score. Learn not things, but how to choose among things. All right, let me talk about how I want you to shuffle together content study with practice questions. The core how I want you to think about this is given in this simple rectangle. The width of the rectangle is your total study time with exam day marking the end point. Well, the information I want you to walk out with is given by the simple geometry here. Early in the process, it's mostly about content study, with a few practice questions thrown in there, just so you remind yourself of what you're getting ready for. As you move through the process, you begin to add practice questions, and then right before the exam, it's mostly about practice questions. Mostly, but never entirely, because ladies and gentlemen, done correctly, questions should always, and I mean always, drive you back to study more. You have a basic problem getting ready for step 1, indeed step 2. Here's the basic problem. We're all biological entities. We're pre-programmed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. What's the problem? Getting ready for the exam is about pain. If you take your pain now by studying the right way, you're going to have a good exam day. And if you do what you like to do that makes you feel good, you're going to have a bad exam day. Your job is to, you know how to do this, take the pain now, get the reward later. Most people like to do questions because questions are bite-sized, they're not threatening, you feel good, you can count how many you've done, you can tell yourself how good you are because of the number of questions you've done. Right, but it doesn't matter how many questions you've done, it matters what you've learned and what you come out the other side understanding. If you don't have a good base of content study, you're not ready to do questions. You have to earn the right to do questions. Please stop telling me you're studying when you're doing questions. You're not. Here's a basic metaphor. Medical metaphor should make sense. The purpose of questions, to find things you don't know. Basically, questions are diagnostic tests that are trying to find problems. The purpose of study, a treatment that fixes the problem. What did I just tell you? If all you're doing is practice questions, all you're doing is diagnosing your patient, guess what? Diagnosis doesn't make a single patient well. You have to do treatment to get the patient well. If all you're doing is, nothing but study, well then you're treating a patient without knowing the diagnosis. The whole purpose of this is quite straightforward. You do questions to find problems, you study to fix the problem. What's the problem? Don't you love when you get questions correct? Don't you feel great when you get a good practice score? You do 50 practice questions, you get 90% correct. Aren't you feeling wonderful about yourself? Feeling like you're smart, you did the right thing, you're good, you're intelligent, you're going to do well? You do 50 practice questions, you get 20 correct. Aren't you feeling like you're the poster child for depression at this point? Wondering whether you made the right decision in your life, wondering whether you're ever going to do this, wondering and doubting whether or not you have the capacity to succeed, right? Look at how your practice score affects your mood, then don't be surprised that you cheat. Because you really want a good practice score, don't you? You really want that good practice score. It means everything. So what are things people do to get a better practice score? You do practice questions without a clock. You get a better score that way. It's false, but you get a better score. Oh, you do practice questions in a single area where they're just all micro questions, all physiology, you get a better score that way. It's false, but you get a better score. Oh, here's my all-time favorite. You go back again over practice questions you've already done before. You score better that way. Wow, look at the score. Yeah, but it's all false. None of it's reality, all of it's fiction. Here's the truth. The practice question you get right make you feel good, and every question you get right does absolutely nothing to get you a better score in examining. Nothing. Every practice question you get wrong makes you feel bad. But every practice question you get wrong, ooh, now you've hit the problem that you need to fix. Now you've hit the issue that needs to be addressed. Now you've hit the teachable moment. What am I reminding you? You love getting them right. It's the ones you get wrong that help you. When you're sitting there doing your practice question, You get a question wrong. Stop saying, oh God, I got this wrong, and start to say, thank you, God, for showing me the way. Because the practice question you get wrong are areas you've discovered now which can be fixed, and therefore your score just popped. Look at your psychology. Look how you relate to this. You love to get them right. It's the ones you get wrong that are actually helping you. So, stop looking for easy questions that give you feel-good exercise. Find the hardest questions you can that make you sweat, and stop worrying about your practice score, because the only score that matters is on exam day. There's no program director I know who can go and say, I didn't do well in the real exam, but my practice scores are really good. They don't really care. You understand that, right? Let's focus on what matters, getting that better score on exam day. Here's the process. You lay down the foundation of study. Once you have a good foundation in place, then you do some practice questions. Based on what you get wrong in those practice questions, now you have clear, explicit, personal guidance as to what you should study. What do? Go to the study. Let me stop and recognize this. Wouldn't it be great if instead of reading the whole book again, you knew exactly which pages you should look at? Not her, you should look at. Practice questions. They're giving you guidance as to where you need to study. Nice, right? Wow, don't you want to know exactly where your time should be spent? That's why you're in practice questions, not to get a score, to get guidance. And then after you do the study for the question you got wrong, well, then you do some more questions. And then you do the study the questions guide you to do. And then more questions, and then more study, and then more questions. When you're ready, you take the exam, and you get your score. That is how this works, folks. This is how you build your ladder to success. And I want you to notice there's two legs to the ladder. It's not just questions, it's not just study, it's how you combine the two together. That is the secret to the process. So, if you sat down here with me today, convinced it's all about questions, my friend, you need to study more, and you know you do. If you sat down with me thinking it's all about how hard you study, then you should start doing practice questions, and I mean probably in the next couple of days, because it's the balance here that matters. Most people watch, listen around you, believe in either a lot of questions gets you a great score or a lot of studying gets you the great score. Both are wrong. It's the combination together that matters. You're getting some push from me, because in case you're not clear, I'm the guy people talk to when they fail the exam. People fail the exam, it's always one of two conversations. I don't understand why I failed. I did every practice question I could find. I went up and I did this question bank and that question bank. I found these translated from Korean. I did those as well. And well, I failed the exam. What use for study material? I told you, I did all these questions. Or conversation two, I can't understand why I failed. I read the core material, I found 2 other books and I read that, I found all this other stuff, I read everything I could find. Well, what do you need for practice questions? I didn't have time for questions, I was trying to read all this stuff that I had to read. It's not about questions, it's not about study, it's how you shuffle the two together. Folks, you know this is true what I'm saying to you right now. So you gotta go out and then behave with the belief that you know is true. Why? Because don't you just want to get a whole good practice score that's great, so you get 90%, you feel good about yourself? Nobody cares. If you feel terrible about yourself during practice, you get a great score on exam day, your ego will be just fine. Let's worry about what matters, which is the performance on the game. The day of the game is all that matters. All right. With that, general advice about getting ready for the exam. I just tried to give you some nuggets of things to get you to go away and think about your process. I'm now going to do a shift. I'm going to do a shift and just talk a little bit about getting a residency, PGY, postgraduate training in the United States. This will be a little bit different presentation. I'm just going to try to give you some sense of the process that you may not understand, or maybe try to clear up some misconceptions people have. All right, first, let's begin to put this map up. Every one of those red dots is 5 international medical graduates in the United States. What I want you to notice is there's a lot of them. 30% of people practicing medicine in the United States are international medical graduates. They went to school outside the United States. I want you to notice that they're all over the country. All right, they're not here. because there's no people here. There's more cows and sheep, so we don't really need much doctors there. But that said, everywhere else is people. Well, one of the things I want you to keep in mind when you think about going and doing residence training in the United States is remember, it's a big country. It's not just New York and California. There's a lot of other country there as well. And since getting a residency is about competing with people, if you go where everybody else is, your life is harder. If you go where other people are not, your life is easier. My wife grew up in New York City. I did not. I grew up in a farm country. But one thing she taught me is don't ride the subway during rush hour. Nice advice. Life is much nicer if you can just go to work when other people are not. Well, the same thing applies for getting a residency. So what you're going to hear is, this is what everybody's doing. I should do that. No. Maybe you should think about doing something different than everybody else. Because if you're a member of the pack trying to all get into the same train car, life is going to be difficult, yes? Think different. Think about what the options are. Don't just follow the pack. You're going to find your life is easier. Next. The key that you need to get a residency position in the United States, well, it really begins with USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 scores. What's your chance, if you're an international medical graduate, of getting a residency position? Well, most recent data says roughly 50%. On a one-year basis, your chance is 50%. If you try a second year, your odds go up somewhat, but I'll put that aside. On a one-year basis, your chance is 50%. That's everything else being equal. What's the key thing that's not equal? Step 1 and Step 2 CK scores. The solid line shows you that as your scores go up, so is the probability of getting the residency. Now, if you're barely passing scores, does that mean you're done? No, it means getting a residency program is much harder. Barely passing scores, your chances are 20%. If your scores are really good, well, then your chance of getting a residency is much easier. But notice, there's no guarantee. It's simply a higher probability going forward. Remember, these scores are not civil service numbers. We take the highest numbers and give you a position. These are screening test scores. Once you're over the score the program director is looking for, the process moves forward. And whether you're over that score by a little bit or a lot, the process moves forward. You don't need the highest possible score. You need a good enough score to move the process forward. Let's do it again. What's the single best thing you can do to help yourself get postgraduate training in the United States? Step 1 and Step 2 CK score. And although Step 1 score matters, please hear me, Step 2 CK score matters most. For international students, the single best predictor of getting residency is Step 2 CK score. Step 1 matters, Step 2 matters more. For U.S. students, it's all about Step 1 because that's all the program directors have. But for you, it's all about having good Step 2 CK score. A good Step 1 base gives you a good Step 2 score, is the way I want you to think about it going forward. When program directors are bringing you in, they're going to make 4 decisions about you. You have to pass 4 hurdles. Hear what I just said. They're not making a single decision about you. They're making 4 decisions about you. You must get 4 yeses to get that position. The first decision to make about you is based on your scores. Now, I want you to understand this concretely and specifically, so listen. Suppose I'm an internal medicine program director. Suppose I have, not uncommonly, 10 first-year slots. How many applications would you get from getting those 10 first-year slots? What do you think? Probably about 800 to 900. Now, am I going to read all 800 to 900 applications? Of course not. I'm a busy guy. I'm running a medical practice. I'm running a residence currently here. God forbid I should have family and social life. I'm not going to read all of those applications. What am I going to do? I'm going to pick a number, and everybody above that number, I'm going to read their application. Everybody below that number, I'm never going to look at them. Or I'm going to decide I'm going to interview 100 people, and I'll take the top 100 numbers, and everybody below that, I'm not even going to talk about. You hear what I just said? I talk to people all the time and say things like, well, my scores aren't real good, but my application's really strong. I don't think you were listening to me. If they don't like your scores, they will not even read your application. You understand me? And they're not being mean. They're doing what you would do in the same position. Because you know what? They are you 10 years ahead. These are not strange and bizarre people. They're you just further along the process. And so look at this from their perspective, because you should be able to anticipate how you would be when you're there. So if they like your score, congratulations, you made the first cut. Yay. Well, now they're going to read your application. your application, which includes your personal statement, your CV, your letters of recommendation, all the information you provide on paper. If they like what they see, congratulations, you passed the second hurdle. How do you pass the second hurdle? They will call or email you and schedule you for an interview. You hear what I just said? You don't call them, they call you. And when they call and say, we'd like to interview you, feel really good, because you just passed two big hurdles. Many people have fallen away by this point, or not even in the running for that. You're still in the running. You should feel really good. You get the call for the interview. Now, let's be clear. Once they're reading your application package, nobody cares about your scores anymore. Nobody cares. Because once I'm looking at all the things you've written, what people have said about you, that pushes those numbers aside. I'm now more influenced by all the information you provided. Nice. And now we schedule you for an interview. You come in, you have your interview. Wonderful. Oh, by the way, now that you're here for the interview, nobody cares about your application package anymore. Because now they see you face to face, all the written stuff about you pushes away. The way we're wired as human beings, what we see, what we feel face to face, blows away all the other abstract information we have, right? Just the way we all work, and so, of course, the program directors, being reasonable people, are going to work the same way. The interview might be a single interview with a single person. You might have 5 of you being interviewed by one person at a time. You might have 5 attending interview you, 1 you, 5 of them. Every program director can do whatever they want. Different program directors do different things. But hey, if they like you in the interview, congratulations, you passed the 3rd hurdle. Wait, we're not done yet. Because the way this works is they don't simply hire you, they rank you. The way our system works is all the program directors rank order the candidates they've looked at in the order that they want them. And then you, as a candidate, rank order the programs in the order that you want them. And then all this information goes into a giant computer program in Washington that tries to come up with a solution. I'll deal with that in just a moment. Understand what I just said? They could like you a lot. If you came to work here, I'd be really happy. That'd be fine by me. You're a great candidate. I just happen to like 49 other people better, so you're number 50 on my rank order. And so by the time the whole computer thing happened, you didn't get placed there. Understand, at the end of the day, they don't hire you, they rank you. And then how do you decide, or how do you find out where you're going for residency? Yes, in case you didn't hear, a giant computer program makes the decision. Now folks, you can either find that terrifying or comforting. Terrifying because a giant computer program makes the decision. Comforting because the giant computer has no prejudice. Doesn't care who you are, where you're from, doesn't care who your parents are, doesn't care if you're thin or fat or tall or short or rich or poor. The computer program literally doesn't care. All it's trying to do is find an optimal mathematical solution to the matrix. Literally, that's all it's doing. It's a giant linear programming problem where it's trying to optimize the solution. It will grind for days until the parameters have maximized, and then it stops and says, here's my solution. Let's do this so you can see it more clearly. The candidates, you, turn in your rank order list of programs. The programs turn in rank order lists for you, the candidates. That information goes in the giant computer program for NRMP, National Residency Match Program, which currently resides in Washington, D.C. The computer churns, and after it's done, it kicks out a solution with candidates matched with programs and programs matched with candidates. Right. But as everybody that knows this kind of high-level math knows, there's no perfect solution. There will always be residual. There will always be candidates without programs and programs without candidates. There's no perfect solution. That's the stuff, the so-called scramble that you might have heard about, where people without programs are trying to find the programs, people without candidates are trying to find candidates. All that said, the way you're almost certainly going to get your position in residency, your postgraduate year education, is in the match. You will learn that you matched before you will find out where you matched. Let's talk a little bit about the match. When the computer says you're going to this particular program, You're going there. It's not a suggestion, it is a legally binding contract. If you don't show up, they can ban you from the match for 7 years and ban you from any residency for 4 years. If the program director doesn't take you, they can ban that program from the match for 3 years. That may not sound like much. If you're a program director and you suddenly get banned from the match, your career just took a nosedive. People are not really happy about you. And by the way, you're going where the computer put you. You can't say to your friend, let's switch. No, you're going where they put you. They're going to put you someplace, you go there. Now remember, they can only match you to places that you list. So they're not going to put you in some program you never heard of. And remember, they can only match you if the program rank orders you. So here, if they don't interview you, then don't rank them, because there will be no match. This is a uniquely American solution. In case you're not aware, we do this differently than Canada does, for example. Canada first matches all their citizens, and then they match non-citizens. US, everyone gets matched at the same time. Do it again. US medical students and international students all go into the same match. We don't match one group and then match the other. Everyone goes into the same match. Program directors, by their selection, can give you greater or lesser chances, and you, by your selection, can give yourself greater or lesser chances to programs. That's how it works. At the end of the day, the envelope comes and you find out where you're going. And that's it. And now your life is set. Remember, when you're trying to get into a residency, postgraduate year, you're not applying for school, you're applying for a job. We pay you $45,000, $50,000 a year, which is, in the scheme of things, for doctors in the United States, not a whole lot of money, but it's a whole lot better than actually paying tuition, can we agree? We pay you. The program director is not trying to admit you for education, they're hiring you to do a job. Of all the things I want you to remember about this process, I want you to remember this. You're going to hear people say, I talked to a program director, and here's the program director said they want, so that must be what everybody wants. Don't believe it, because the one thing to remember about the United States is, just like all around the world, diversity is the truth of life. One program director might say you're wonderful, another program director across the street says, you got to be kidding, I can't imagine why you applied here. Your job is to find the people that want what you're bringing. This is not about people voting on how good a person you are. This is you trying to find a fit, literally a match. And so the right metaphor for getting into residency is not applying to school, it's getting married. And remember, the right person for you to marry is not the right person for you to marry, and certainly not the right person for you to marry. You have to try to find the match. This can be hard on your ego, because you're going to hear a lot of people say they're not interested in you. If you hear a couple people say that, you go to your room, you sit there and feel sad about yourself, you will certainly not match. If 2 people say they're not interested in you, go find a third, go find a fourth, go find a fifth. There are 8,500 residency positions in the United States, residency programs, is what I meant to say. You get an awful lot of no's and still be in. In fact, let's put it this way. You look at 100 programs, or 99 of them say they're not interested. What are you doing next year? You're in residency. You don't need the world to love you. You need one. I don't need every woman in the world to love me. I need one. It's not about people voting on you. It's about finding a match, a fit. Of all the things I can tell you about this process, that's the most important thing to remember. People always say to me, what do I have to get into residency? Oh, that's absolutely the wrong question. If you're asking me that, you don't understand how this process works at all. You aren't listening to me. You are what you are. You have what you have. You have the numbers and skills and experience that you have. You can't magically transform yourself into something else. So stop asking me what you should have. Here's how it works. Here's what I am. I understand it clearly. I know specifically. I've articulated it in my application. Now I have to shop and find someone who likes what I'm bringing. That's how this works. You don't transform yourself into some ideal. No one is the ideal. You find someone who likes what you're bringing. If you walk into someone who doesn't like you, shrug your shoulders and find somebody else. That's literally how the process works, folks. Getting through this process is, again, about just putting your ego aside, recognizing how it works, and being persistent until you get to the goal you want. And if you feel bad because not everyone in the world likes you, I'm sorry, we're adults here. You already knew that already, right? Your job is not to feel bad because people don't like you. It's to do what you need to do to find the position you want to move your career forward. That's it. That's the process. And that's pretty much the time I was going to spend talking with you. I tried to talk you through just a little bit about the exams, about some questions, about getting ready for the exams, about how you use practice questions, and finally, just a little about some information about getting the residency, what the process is about. I'm now going to stop and sort of open the floor for questions. You've been a quiet group, that may be a dangerous thing to do, but I'm going to try anyhow. So, if you have any questions or comments about anything I said, now's your time. Be brave, somebody be brave at least to start it off, and the floor is open for questions. Anyone have any questions? Yes, please. What's considered to be a good USMLE score? That's a great question, so here we go. Listen, the mean, the average last year for step 1, 230. The mean, the average last year for step 2CK, 240. Notice you have to be 10 points better in step 2 to have an equivalent score for step 1, right? In general, I said there's a 50% chance of getting a residency if you're an international medical graduate. Beat the mean. If you're in the top half of all the candidates, pretty good place to be, right? The standard deviation is 20, and so you can do better if you have your basic biostat down. If you're at 230 on step 1, you're on the average, 50th percentile. If you're 250, you're 1 standard deviation over the mean, 84th percentile. What did I just tell you? 250, you just beat 84% of the doctors on the planet. Pretty strong score. Lots of people want to talk to you, don't you think? Beat the mean. 230 and above for step 1, 240 and above for step 2CK. Other questions? Yes, please. Question is, how many hospitals offer programs for international medical school graduates? Theoretically, all of them. Because every program director, Liz Hearman, can do whatever they want. So they can say, I don't like short people, and I'll hire short people. They can't say that legally, but they can do that. You have to have better score on domestic students. Depends on the program director, but again, you're program director. You get all your scores, you put on a county spreadsheet, you hit sort. When you hit sort, you know who the international students are and who the US students are? No, all you know is the numbers. So you take your top group of numbers, how you look at them. Now, if I'm a big and I'm a prejudiced person, I can say I don't want anyone from outside the United States, and I get to say that. You know what? The world's full of prejudice. I'm sorry, you knew that already. You're not going there. And by the way, you didn't want to go there because that would be really hellacious 4 years. But there's no law, no rule that says you're at a disadvantage. Our match puts everyone in the system at the same time, and the idea that most people had, some people had, that we're going to increase the number of U.S. medical students, therefore international students will take second place, hasn't worked out by the data. The last several years, U.S. medical students match rate keeps going down. Why? Some program directors prefer international students. Why? Right, yourself in position. I will quote a program director friend of mine. He said, here's my options. I can take the bottom of the U.S. medical student pool, or I can take some of the best doctors from around the world who apply to me. Gee, that's an easy decision. Because I'm not looking for people just to bring you into school. I'm looking for people I have to work with every day, depend on, and the more competent you are, the easier my life is. Who do you think I'm going to bring? So, is there prejudice in the world? Absolutely yes. I'm repeating that on purpose. You run into prejudiced people, shrug your shoulders and walk away. That's always my attitude. That said, there's no rule that says you're at a disadvantage. If there is this, if I bring in a U.S. medical student and they do terribly, everybody says, oh well. If I bring in an international student and they do terribly, people say, why did you bring in an international student? So if I'm risk averse, I'm going to go for it. But if I'm looking for the best possible team, then I'm going to bring a mix of people in. Best program directors I know want a team. Just like fun, we putting together a sports team. You have different kinds of people with different experience. And let's understand, you all have some real advantages in some ways over U.S. students. What are advantages you have? Many of you have more experience about how the world works. in order to just work yourself through the system and go to the United States, you are more sophisticated than the average U.S. medical student. And so when I'm putting a team together, that will get me through the first 6 months of residency. I want some seasoning. I want people who've had a little bit of experience. Many of you are better procedures than U.S. medical students. I'm sorry, medical students in the U.S. suck at basic procedures like taking blood and intubations and stuff like that. So I'm trying, you see where I'm going here? I need you to think about this a little bit more broadly. If you want to tell me people are prejudiced, I'll say absolutely they are, but all you do is cross that person off your list and go on to somebody else. That's really my advice. Good question. Other questions? Yes, please, loud.
How long does it take for the results to get released for each of the trials?
How long does it take the results to get released for the match?
No, actually for the step 1 results.
For step 1? Usually it happens in about 4 weeks. Sometimes when making changes in the exam, changing scoring, changing templates, they publish that it's going to be delayed, and then it could be maybe as much as 7 to 8 weeks. Usually they beat what they tell you. So when they say 4, it often comes in 2 to 3. But they're giving themselves institutional room that they can meet the deadline that they say. But that said, if you're watching your email every day, hitting refresh, stop it. Go have a life. The score will come. That's really what I want you to think about it. Because once you've taken your exam, you're done. There's nothing you can do in the universe to change the result. So go ahead and do whatever else you're going to do. The score will come. If you're trying to squeeze your scores in so you can apply for residency when the time frame is short, okay. But that usually means you didn't do enough preparation for the exam because you're trying to short yourself to get in, and that may not be the right strategy. Maybe waiting another year, having done your preparation correctly, would be a better strategy. We talk about these things, but I have these conversations all the time, especially when it gets to be October, November. People say, well, I didn't have my exam yet, my score will get in December. All right, you can technically apply, but that's really not a good chance because you're behind the curve, you're behind the pack, and you're rushing, and maybe that's not the best thing to do. Other questions? Yes, please. Questions, what's an ideal time period to study? Well, I have to say there's individual variation. So I want to start honestly. The world is a normal distribution. So first think about where you are in that normal distribution. If you're someone who is an average student, then I'd probably say about 3 months. Seems to be about right. Sometimes people need more, some people need less. If you had trouble with one or more of your subjects, if you had some time away from school because you're distracted by things, family issues perhaps, if English is something you learn relatively later in life after age 12, then you probably got a little bit more time to that. That said, if you decide to take 3 months, at the end of 3 months you find you're not ready, don't take it. One of the beauties of this process is to remind you again, you take it when you're ready. And it's not that I keep wanting you to postpone taking your exam in perpetuity, because that's not right. But I don't want you to take it when you feel like you're not ready. Best decisions in medicine are made by a combination of data plus gut. Kahneman and Tversky won a Nobel Prize for this. Just looking at the lab values is not enough. You look at the lab values and your gut. And by the way, if your gut disagrees with the lab values, don't you dare just believe the lab values. Someone should whack you on the back of the head and say, stop that. Same thing for getting ready for the exam. You take practice exams, see where you are by number. You have a gut that tells you where you are by, and when those two things agree, you're ready to take the exam. 3 months is about right, but some people need more, some people need less. Usually you can't tell until you're into the process, and then you sort of find out where you are on the curve. U.S. medical students take probably about a month, but they are coming straight out of school where they're being taught by, who writes the questions on the exam? U.S. medical school faculty. So they're being taught in a template where things in some sense will make more sense to them. It's not that you're being taught by people that don't know what they're doing. You're being taught by people that think about medicine differently than the U.S. faculty. And it takes a while to make an adjustment for that. Other questions? These are all good questions. Yes, please. How much does research and publication matter? It helps, but it's not definitive. You know what's the most important part of your application? Everything. Because I know you're going to hear the personal statement matters most. Someone else will say your letter of recommendation matters most. All right, let's be clear. They're not reading your application trying to like you. You're in your application trying to find a reason to discard you. You hear what I just said? They're trying to figure out something wrong with you. If they can figure out something wrong in any one of the things we mentioned, then you're done. They will go on to somebody else. Why? They have plenty of applicants. They're going to go on to somebody else. And then you're going to have that person not on your radar screen any longer. You know, the others will still be, but that person won't be. So having research is a good thing if you're going into research. I hear people say that having good research is always a positive. No, it's not. The program directors I know, if you apply with several research papers, they won't look at you. Why? We do clinical medicine here. We're not interested in academic medicine. We're interested in real care of patients. Clearly you have a different career in mind. I don't think you're fit for us. There's no national standard. There's no board that decided here's the things you have to have. So if you like research, do research. I'm a researcher by training and inclination. If you did research so you can say you did research, I can tell. It didn't help you. You understand what I'm saying? If you really like research, I can tell. And that'll help you if you were talking to me because I like research, you like research, does it fit? That's how I need you to think about these things. Other questions? Yes, please. What kind of question banks do I recommend? The most used question bank is one called UWorld, USMLE World. Most people do that. Becker has a really good question bank as well. Our question bank is a little harder than UWorld, so for that reason I think it's actually a little bit better. But everybody uses UWorld, so I have to mention that to you. There are plenty of question banks out there for step one. I would probably say in rank order, you're going to do UWorld, you're going to do Becker, and the other ones you can find, but they are sometimes old. I will say this, USMLE RX is a level 1 and level 2 question bank. It's not bad to do when you're learning your medicine, but it's not really at the level of the step 1 exam. And the students tell me that, so I'm just telling you what they tell me. If you do questions and you think they're really easy, get a harder question bank. It's also the advice I give you. I also put this pitch in. I probably get an email every other week from a student that says something like the following. I need more questions. I've done like this question bank and this other question bank. I've done 5,000 questions. My score's still not where I want it to be. Where can I get more questions? And I always write back the following. Okay, let's think about this. You've done 5,000 questions. Your score's not where you want it to be. So you allege if you did another 2,000 questions, suddenly your score will be where you want it to be? Doctor, if you treated your patient for 2 weeks with a certain medicine and they weren't getting better, don't you think maybe we should switch treatments? Right. If you're doing a lot of questions and your score isn't getting better, then that's clearly not what's going to get you a score in your exam, right? Please keep that in mind. Questions are done to guide you to study. If you're cranking through a lot of questions, I want you to do a good number of questions, but I want you to do other things other than do questions. Other questions? Speaking of questions. Yes, please. What do I recommend for study materials? Gee, I'm here with a group called Becker, so you'll be surprised at this answer. That said, now put that aside. Go look at the Becker material. I think you'll agree they're objectively better than anything else out there. Put the Becker material next to Kaplan. Put them next to all the other review books out there. I just think they're objectively better. Most people tell us that. The Becker faculty are people who have been doing this as I have for well over 30 years. Much of the other review material that you're going to find was written by our faculty. The Becker materials, in some sense, their most recent effort, the most updated effort. It's well laid out, it's organized for the exam, targeted with the illustrations you need, the explanations you need, and we have a version of electronically called GuideMD, where the faculty literally lecture you down to the content, so you're not just sitting there reading yourself. That said, we find that different presentations work for different people. So if you find another book that really works for you, or works better than even the Becker material, we have to say use that book. But here's the structure, you get one source. You don't get two, you get one. So if you decide that this material you're looking at isn't good enough, you need a second book, then throw out the first book and get a book, because you only one book. You start studying 2 sources or 3 sources, you just double or triple your workload. Don't do that. One source. And I invite you to try the Becker material. I think you'll find it's actually very good, we're well reviewed, well received. You haven't heard about us because we all used to work other places, we came here and put a company together, but this is some of the best brains on the planet for doing this, I confess. Oh, excuse me. The gentleman that runs the business side tells you, I have to tell you, we have an amazing price too.
For IMU specifically.
For this school in particular, yes. The school has actually negotiated a very, very, very good price for you to give you access to all the material. All right, I'm going to hand over the microphone. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. And especially if many of you don't know Dr. Stephen, you just go to YouTube and then put Dr. Stephen's videos. You would see some old videos where he looked much younger. But the thing is, those videos are with Kaplan when he was earlier working with them. And we generally discourage you all to look at those and follow those videos because the content has changed, the concept has changed. But again, if you look at the material, the Becker.com material, it's quite exhaustive, inexhaustive. It's a lot of information is there. Essentially, the content and the what we call as guide MD, the QMD. So it's quite enormous, and you can go through that. And on the link, imu.edu.my/USMLE, you have all the information about the fee structure, about the website, and there's a sample trial also. So you can just go through that. But shortly, we'll put up more details about registration and then how we could access the material. Yes. So some of the screens you can see, this is more like an interactive material. It's just not PowerPoint or any of these Word file which has a voice behind. Here, the content experts are literally guiding you all through the material and with annotation, with highlighting important high-end topics. So essentially, you would be learning the high-yield contents, and keep in mind these are all review lectures or review video files. So review means you already know something, you are revisiting them. So as Dr. Stephen has suggested or stressed about that, your basic knowledge, what you acquire in medical school is most important. And over than that, you go through this review material and you tend to be much better in dealing with the conditions or decision making.
I threw this slide up just to show you when I talk about something called guide MD, is what I'm talking about. And you can't tell, this is just a still slide, but this is how it works. You have the electronic version of the book, and when you click on the button, a faculty member walks you down through it, talking like I was just talking to you now, but it's recorded. As we're talking, the things you see in yellow and red come out like a ghost hand is writing it. As if someone is sitting there underlining when we're talking. As we lecture in our courses, this is how we lecture. We project the book, and we talk from the book. The theory is to control your attention by underlining and highlighting and focus you on the one thing, the book. We don't want you to have slides in the book. We want you to have the book, and that's it. You master the book. You can click, and all the stuff will show up for you. You can add your own annotations. You can add your own notes. But the idea is to walk you down through, so by vision and by hearing, you're being guided to exactly what the content is going forward. You can play this, even if you wish, as sometimes U.S. medical students do, at double speed. If you think the faculty talk too slowly, you can hit double speed and they talk really fast. Because if you want to go through something, and what I also like about it is, again, I did videos for years. If you want to find something, some point you missed in the video, you got to listen through the video and try to find it. Here, you just turn to the page and find what you want. U.S. medical students say this is much more efficient when they're studying because you get the piece you want, and then you can go on and not have to waste time hunting for what you need going forward. So it's a proprietary technology to Becker. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. This way of having you being guided through your learning is different than other things. We don't give you a faculty member's face because if If you like looking at my face, thank you, but it doesn't help you learn any better. What we're trying to do is focus you on where the learning is, which is in the book.
Do you have any more questions? Yes.
I can't hear you, try again.
Well, when you finish your basic sciences, which might be your 2.5, if you haven't done your pharmacology, then it doesn't make any sense to take the exam. You have to finish all your path, it makes sense to take the exam. So when you're at the spot where you finish your basic sciences, and we do recommend that instead of waiting until you finish medical school, because you're gonna forget the basic sciences when you get into clinicals. You'll be taught to think differently, and they don't talk mechanism to you in the floors. The USMLE wants you to talk mechanism to the attendings, so they're trying to test you, see who actually asks those questions, go to the floors. We really recommend you take it pretty quickly after you're finished. If you don't have to, there's no rule, but most people find their scores better when they do that. Oh, I thought you were higher.
Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for you all coming here. So please be in touch on for more information on the program we are offering and then the support we are having. So going forward, we'll be having more interactive sessions. Essentially, the students who will be taking up USMLE exams or they're preparing towards that, and we'll be meeting faculty at different time periods. Okay, so we'll have more discussion in months to come.
Sí.